The courtroom was full and the judge had not yet entered, and already Dr. Reginald Foss was telling the room that the case was closed. Not officially. Not yet. He was standing near the defense table in his charcoal suit, speaking to a junior attorney from his own firm. Not bothering to lower his voice, because he had not lowered his voice in a courtroom in 31 years, and he did not intend to start now. "The Alderton conviction is settled law," he said. 3 appeals, 3 denials. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either inexperienced or confused. He did not look at the young woman sitting at the opposite table. She was looking at him. Camille O.C. Hartwell was 29 years old. She had graduated first in her class from the University of Michigan Law School. She had clerked for a federal judge in the Sixth Circuit. She had turned down 3 offers from larger firms to take a position at the Midwest Innocence Coalition, a nonprofit that operated out of a suite of offices above a dry cleaner on Woodward Avenue in Detroit. Her name was on the docket. She had been admitted to the bar for 4 years. She had never tried a case this large. She knew that. The reporters in the gallery knew that. The 2 other attorneys from the prosecution's side knew that. Reginald Foss, who had tried 47 cases before this bench and won 43 of them, knew that most of all. What none of them knew except Camille was what was inside the banker's box sitting on the table in front of her. She had found it 8 months ago. In a basement, in a cardboard archive carton that had not been opened since 1997. She had been shaking when she opened it. She was not shaking now. The bailiff called the room to order. The Honorable Patricia Ann Winters entered from the side door. Everyone rose. Everyone sat. The air in the Wayne County Circuit courtroom smelled like old wood and recycled air, and the particular kind of tension that only exists when someone is about to argue that a man who has been in prison for 26 years did not do the thing the state of Michigan said he did. Camille opened her folder. She did not look at the gallery. She did not look at Foss. She looked at the name printed at the top of her brief. Leonard O.C. Hartwell, inmate number 294-1107, Muskegon Correctional Facility, age 58. Her father, 26 years earlier, in the autumn of 1999, Leonard O.C. Hartwell had been a licensed structural engineer in the city of Detroit. He had graduated from Wayne State University in 1989. He had published 2 papers in industry journals on load-bearing assessments in aging municipal infrastructure. He had a small consulting firm, 4 employees, a daughter who was 3 years old, and a contract to assess the structural integrity of the Carver Bridge on the east side of the city. In November of 1999, a section of the Carver Bridge collapsed during morning rush hour. 2 people died. 11 were injured. 3 weeks later, Leonard was arrested. The prosecution's theory was that his inspection report had been falsified, that he had signed off on a bridge he knew was failing, that he had taken a bribe from the city contractor responsible for deferred maintenance to keep the report clean. The contractor's name was Douglas Harwick. He had an attorney named Reginald Foss. Leonard had a public defender named Mr. Tolliver, who was managing 112 other cases that year, and who met with him 3 times before trial. The jury convicted Leonard in 9 hours. He received 25 to life. Camille was 3 when they took him. She was raised by her mother, Gloria, and her grandmother, Estelle, in a house in Inkster. She visited her father every month until she was 12, then every other month, then less. Because the drive was long and her mother's back was getting worse. And the look on her father's face through the glass was a kind of weight she did not yet have the words for. The month she turned 15, her grandmother pressed a folder into her hands. Inside was a photocopy of her father's original inspection report, the one he had submitted to the city, the one the prosecution said he had falsified. "Read it," Estelle said. "Read every word." Camille read it. Twice. Then she read the trial transcript. Then she read the prosecutor's closing argument. Then she sat at the kitchen table for a long time with a pencil in her hand. The report her father had submitted cited 17 specific structural deficiencies on the Carver Bridge. 17. in detail, with photographs, with a recommendation for immediate remediation. The report entered into evidence at trial had cited 4 deficiencies, moderate, with a clean sign-off. They were not the same document. Camille was 15 years old when she understood that. She wrote on the top of her notebook in ballpoint pen. Somebody switched the report. She kept that notebook for 14 years. Reginald Foss rose to address the court. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with the particular confidence of someone who has stood in front of enough judges to stop being afraid of them. Your Honor, this motion for post-conviction relief rests on the assertion that exculpatory evidence was withheld at trial. The people will demonstrate that this claim is without foundation. The original conviction has survived 3 rounds of appeal. The evidence was reviewed by the Sixth Circuit. The question before this court has already been answered. He sat down. He did not glance at Camille. Judge Winters looked at the defense table. Ms. O.C. Hartwell. Camille stood. She was not tall. She wore a navy blazer and her grandmother's pin at her collar, a small silver bird that Estelle had worn to every church service for 30 years. She had pressed her hair the night before while sitting on the edge of her mother's bed, listening to her mother say, quietly, that she should be careful, that Foss had friends in this building, that the men who had done this had never stopped having friends in this building. Camille had said, I know, Mama. She had not said, that's why I went to the basement. She stood in front of the court and put her hands flat on the table. Your Honor, the people are correct that the Sixth Circuit reviewed the evidence from the 1999 trial. What the Sixth Circuit did not review, because it did not exist in the trial record, was this. She lifted a single manila folder from the banker's box. 8 months ago, a maintenance worker named Arthur Dupree was clearing a storage room at the Wayne County Infrastructure Archive on East Jefferson when he found a sealed carton marked for destruction. Standard protocol would have had it shredded in 1997. The shredding order was signed. The carton was mislabeled. It sat in a basement for 26 years. She opened the folder. She held up a document. A photograph of it appeared on the courtroom display screen. This is the original structural inspection report submitted by Leonard O.C. Hartwell to the City of Detroit on October 14, 1999. It contains 17 cited deficiencies. It contains a recommendation for immediate closure of the Carver Bridge, pending emergency remediation. It is signed, dated, and time-stamped by the city clerk's receiving office at 4:47 p.m. The room was very still. The document entered into evidence at the 1999 trial, cited 4 deficiencies, and recommended continued monitoring. It bore the same signature, same date, a different timestamp, and it had been received, according to the clerk's log, at 9:02 a.m. of the same day, 7 hours before the actual report was filed. She set the folder down. Someone filed a substitute document in the morning. Someone removed the original from the receiving queue, and someone's made sure the version that went to trial was the version that put my father in prison. Foss was on his feet. Objection, Your Honor. You'll have your turn, Mr. Foss. Judge Winters's voice was quiet. It did not need to be loud. Sit down. He sat. Camille did not look at him. She looked at the judge. My father has been incarcerated for 26 years for falsifying a document he never falsified. The original report is here. The chain of custody for the archive carton is documented. The discrepancy in the timestamps is verifiable from city records that have been subpoenaed and are before this court. She paused. We are asking the court to vacate the conviction, not to retry it, to end it. She sat down. In the gallery, a woman in the 4th row, who had driven from Inkster that morning on a bad back and had not missed a single day of proceedings, put both hands over her mouth. Gloria O.C. Hartwell did not make a sound. She had practiced not making sounds in courtrooms for a long time. The recess lasted 40 minutes. Camille sat in a conference room down the hall with her co-counsel, a man named Bernard, who had been doing innocence work for 19 years and who had not, in all that time, felt his hands shake the way they were shaking now. The timestamp discrepancy alone is enough, he said. If the original was filed at 4:47 and the substitute was received at 9:02 of the same morning, somebody had to have prepared the substitute before the original was filed. It means it was planned, Camille said, before the report was even submitted. Bernard sat down. How did you find the Dupree carton? Capile was quiet for a moment. My grandmother told me when I was 15 that the city clerk's office logged every subscription in a paper ledger before they were scanned. She said the ledger would have the real time stamp. She had asked in 2001 for a copy of the ledger page. She was told it didn't exist, but it did exist. The logging system was archived to microfilm in 2003. I filed a FOIA request 18 months ago for all microfilm records from October 1999 in the city clerk's infrastructure division. It took 14 months to process. The ledger page came back last February. She looked at her hands. My grandmother died in March. She never saw it. Bernard did not say anything for a moment. She knew, Camille said. She always knew. She just didn't have the piece of paper. When the recess ended, Reginald Foss asked for additional time to review the newly presented materials. Judge Winters granted 48 hours. Foss walked into the hallway afterward with his junior attorneys moving in a cluster around him. A reporter from the Detroit Free Press moved toward him with a recorder. Mr. Foss, can you comment on the document discrepancy? The people will respond in full in our brief, Foss said. There are questions of chain of custody. There are questions of provenance. We have not had the opportunity to fully analyze what was presented today, and I would caution against the timestamp differences in city records, the reporter said. That's not a chain of custody issue. Foss stopped walking. For 1/2 second, the expression on his face did something that did not belong there. Then it was gone. No further comment, he said, and he walked to the elevator. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Camille's phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was a number she didn't recognize, a 313 area code. She answered. A man's voice, older, said, "Is this the attorney representing Leonard O.C. Hartwell?" "It is." A pause. "My name is Gerald Prentice. I worked in the city infrastructure office from 1995 to 2006. I was a records clerk. I've been watching this case." Another pause. Longer. "I know what happened to that report. I've known for 26 years. I need to talk to you." Camille walked to the window at the end of the hall and stood with her back to the corridor. "Where are you, Mr. Prentice?" "Dearborn. I can be wherever you need me." "Tonight," she said. "I need you tonight." Gerald Prentice was 64 years old. He was a small man, thin, with hands that did not stop moving. He sat at a conference table in the Innocence Coalition office above the dry cleaner at 8:15 that evening. And he told Camille and Bernard what he had never told anyone in 26 years. In November of 1999, 3 days after the Carver Bridge collapse, a man named Douglas Harwick had come to the records office. Not the front desk, the back. He had asked to speak to the supervisor. The supervisor at the time was a man named Carl, who had since died. Gerald had been in the filing room. The door was open a few inches. He had heard Harwick say, "The O.C. Hartwell report needs to be swapped. There's a clean version. It goes in the front file. The original goes in the back archive under a mislabel." He had heard Carl say, "And the ledger?" He had heard Harwick say, "The ledger stays. Nobody looks at the ledger. Ledgers are for internal use. Nobody will ever pull a ledger page for a criminal case. They'll pull the file." Gerald Prentice looked at his hands. "He was right," he said. "For 26 years he was right." Camille looked at him. "Why are you coming forward now?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 27. She's starting law school in the fall." He looked up. "I watched you in that courtroom on the news today. You're younger than she is. And you found what I was too afraid to say." He reached into his coat pocket and set something on the table. A small envelope sealed. His name in the corner. "I wrote it down in 2001, he said. "I mailed it to myself. I never opened it. I just kept it." He looked at the envelope. I kept it because I thought, if I ever needed to, I could prove I knew, that I had written it down before anything happened. A pause. I'm not sure that makes me a good person. Camille looked at the envelope, then she looked at him. It makes you a witness, she said. That's what we need right now. Foss's brief, filed 47 hours later, argued chain of custody problems with the archive carton. It argued that the timestamp discrepancy could be explained by clerical processing error. It argued that Gerald Prentice was an uncorroborated witness with no documentary foundation for his account. Then, Camille filed the microfilm ledger and the sealed envelope, and the testimony of the archivist who had processed the FOIA request, and a forensic document examiner's analysis demonstrating that the substitute report had been typed on a different machine than the letterhead it appeared on. Foss filed a motion for continuance. The hearing resumed on a Thursday morning. The gallery was packed. There were cameras in the corridor outside. A producer from a national morning show was in the back row. Camille stood up to deliver her closing argument on the motion. She had written it twice. She had thrown away the first version because it was too careful. The second version she had written, sitting at her kitchen table at midnight, with her mother's old photographs of Leonard spread out in front of her. Leonard at his Wayne State graduation. Leonard, in his hard hat outside his first job site. Leonard holding a 3-year-old Camille in his arms outside a birthday party, laughing. She was not going to use any of that in court, but she had needed to look at it while she wrote. She stood. She straightened her grandmother's pin. Your Honor, the people have argued that the timestamp discrepancy may reflect clerical error. I want to be precise about what that would require. It would require that a substitute document was received by the city clerk's office 7 hours before the original document was filed. That means the substitute existed before the original was submitted. The only way that is possible is if someone created a substitute document in advance of knowing what the original would say, which means someone planned this before Leonard O.C. Hartwell ever filed his report. She paused. Douglas Harwick's deferred maintenance liability was in the hundreds of millions of dollars if that bridge was condemned. Reginald Foss was his attorney. The substitute report benefited exactly one party in the aftermath of the Carver Bridge collapse, and it was not the public, and it was not the 2 people who died on that bridge, and it was not Leonard O.C. Hartwell. The room was completely still. My father submitted a report that would have closed that bridge. That report was replaced by one that would not. He has spent 26 years in Muskegon Correctional Facility for an act of falsification that the documentary record now shows he never committed. His daughter was 3 years old when he was taken. She is 29 now. Camille's voice did not break. She had practiced until it would not break. We are asking this court to correct what the court of 1999 could not have known it was getting wrong. She sat down. She put her hands in her lap. Under the table, where no one could see, she pressed her palms flat against her thighs to stop them from shaking. Judge Winters was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Foss. Mr. Foss, your client in the underlying matter, Douglas Harwick. Is he represented by your firm in any capacity currently? Foss's jaw moved. Your Honor, I don't see the relevance. I'm not asking about relevance. I'm asking whether your firm currently represents Douglas Harwick. A pause. In a limited capacity. Yes. Judge Winters looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she turned to her clerk. I'd like to take a 15-minute recess. The recess lasted 40 minutes. When Judge Winters returned, she did not sit down immediately. She stood at the bench with a single sheet of paper in her hand, and she read from it without looking up. This court finds that the documentary evidence presented by the defense, including the original inspection report, recovered from the Wayne County Infrastructure Archive, the microfilm ledger entry establishing the filing time of 4:47 p.m. on October 14, 1999, the forensic document examination, and the sworn account of Gerald Prentice collectively establish a credible and substantial claim that material exculpatory evidence was suppressed at the time of trial. She looked up. She looked at Camille. The conviction of Leonard O.C. Hartwell is vacated. The people are ordered to show cause within 30 days as to why charges should not be dismissed with prejudice. Bail is set at personal recognizance, pending that determination. Mr. O.C. Hartwell is to be released from Muskegon Correctional Facility no later than close of business today. The gallery made a sound, not a cheer. Something older than a cheer. The sound a room makes when it has been holding something very heavy for a very long time and is finally allowed to set it down. In the fourth row, Gloria did not stand. She sat completely still, with both hands pressed over her heart. The woman next to her, a stranger, reached over and took her hand without being asked. Gloria let her. Foss stood at his table. His face was the color of old chalk. He looked at Camille for the first time since the morning the hearing had begun. Camille looked back at him. She did not smile. She did not say anything. She just looked at him long enough that both of them knew that she had seen him clearly for 26 years. Then she turned away. At 6:44 p.m., a car pulled into the parking lot outside Muskegon Correctional Facility. Camille was driving. Gloria was in the passenger seat. They did not speak the whole drive. There was nothing left to say that required words. The door opened. Leonard O.C. Hartwell walked out. He was wearing the clothes he had been arrested in, which no longer fit, and he was carrying a paper bag with his personal effects, which did not weigh very much. He was 58 years old. He had gone in at 32. He walked with the careful step of a man who had learned not to move too fast in small spaces, and it would take him a long time to unlearn that. He stopped when he saw Camille. She walked toward him. She had not seen him outside a visitation room in 26 years. She had not touched him since she was a child. He opened his arms. She walked into them. Neither of them said anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough and small and nothing like the courtroom. "Your grandmother," he said. "Did she?" "She knew," Camille said. Into his shoulder. "She always knew. She just wanted the paper to prove it." He held on. Behind them, Gloria got out of the car. She stood by the door and looked at the two of them, her husband and her daughter, in a parking lot in Muskegon at 6:44 in the evening. She had waited 26 years for this parking lot. She walked toward them without hurrying. There was time now. 3 weeks later, the Wayne County prosecutor announced that Douglas Harwick was under investigation for evidence, tampering and obstruction of justice. Reginald Foss withdrew from all representation related to the matter. 2 of his former junior associates went on record with the Bar Association. The investigation was ongoing. Camille went back to the office above the dry cleaner on Woodward Avenue. There were 47 other files in the cabinet behind her desk. 47 other names. She opened the next folder. On the first page, in the margin, in her own handwriting from 3 years ago, when she had first reviewed the case, she had written, "Something's wrong with the timeline here." She picked up her pencil. There is always a girl with a notebook and a name that the room does not expect to matter. There is always a ledger in a basement that nobody thought to pull. What changes is whether someone is willing to sit with the paper long enough to read what it actually says. Camille O.C. Hartwell had been reading since she was 15. She was just getting started.